Hi, welcome to Freedom Talk. I'm proud to welcome today Joni Bryan with the 917 Society, which is tasked with getting constitutions into kids' hands, which I think is great. Welcome to Freedom Talk.
Thank you for having me, Kelly.
That's okay. I can do that part over and I'll cut, splice, and things. So, Joni, welcome to Freedom Talk.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just getting to know what your organization does, and I understand we're going to be helping to raise some funds. You know, as someone who has been a school teacher, who has 5 kids, who's been involved in education, I think getting the Constitution into kids' hands is an amazing and very important thing to do. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, to kind of give you a background, my background is social work and teaching. And, I was kind of like most Americans. I voted, I would send people to Washington, and then I wouldn't think anything else about it. And so one day I was at work and I worked at a retirement community, and one of the residents there, he was 6'5" to my little 5 feet. And we were always debating court cases because he was a constitutional lawyer. Plus, he had been involved in the 60s in the civil rights movement and also ran for governor here in Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
And so we were debating this court case. And he said to me, "My dear, you realize that's unconstitutional." And of course, he looked down and he pulled the Constitution out of his pocket. And he said, "My dear, when is the last time you read your Constitution?" And when he said that to me, I realized I had never read it. And I started to dwell on that. I thought, wow, I consider myself educated. I have a degree in biology and chemistry. And so I was thinking, wow, when was the last time I even saw the Constitution? And that was in 8th grade, Mrs. Alexander's class in public school in rural Alabama. If you can't tell, I'm Southern. And so
Right.
just a little bit. And so I thought, wow, maybe it's just me. Maybe I just slipped through the cracks. So I started asking everybody, the CEO, the managers, the people in the kitchen, everybody. And I was getting the same answer. Nobody's read it. And I thought, wow, we got a problem in this country. And it's not something that just started yesterday. I've been out of school a while. My children are grown now. And so this has been going on a pretty long time. And I thought, well, how do we fix it? When I was a social worker, I always taught my children, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of what, Kelly?
Yeah,
You're part of the problem. Absolutely. And so I thought, wow, how do we fix it? And so I started researching everything I could about the Constitution. And I learned that there's a federal mandate. All schools that get federal funds are supposed to have a program on the Constitution on or around September 17th. So that's why we named our organization the 917 Society, because we want to just honor and celebrate that day. And so I started asking a lot of questions. I started asking teachers, what do you guys do for Constitution Day? And they would just look at me like, what's Constitution Day? And I thought, okay, so people really don't know about the mandate. They don't know that it's supposed to be happening. And it's Federal Mandate 108-447, if you want to look it up. And it's just 2 sentences, but they're very powerful sentences. We're supposed to be honoring and celebrating the Constitution. So I started asking all the teachers I knew, well, what if we gave you a free program? Because I was married to a public school teacher for a long time. And I laugh. I tell this when I speak. I say he was a great teacher, not a great husband because we're divorced, but he was a great teacher. And so I give him credit for that. And so I started asking that question, and I know that teachers struggle. Our public school teachers, they have a lot on them. You were one, you said, funding, how that's an issue. Time, there's so many constraints on their time. And so I thought, what if we gave them a free program? something free for Constitution Day that they could have. And I learned that in the 8th grade in the U.S. curriculum, they're supposed to do civics in depth. It's part of the U.S. curriculum. So, and there are a few states that do the 7th, but most it's the 8th grade. And so I thought, okay, what if we, and I asked the teachers and they were like, yes, we'd love it. We'd love it. And that's kind of how the 917 Society was born. And so we started here in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee, just the Nashville and surrounding area. Our first year, we gave out about 25,000 of these pocket constitutions. Plus, we have free educational resources online that they could access.
What I've got here.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Well, we print our own because we print in such bulk.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, I love the title on the top. I like the branding.
Yeah, isn't that neat? And so the teachers overwhelmingly have loved it. We actively pursue our principals so that they know about the mandate, because most don't even know. They don't even know it's out there. And so we let them know about it, and we say, here's a free, we appreciate you as a public school educator, and we want to provide this free program. All you have to do is let us know how many you need for your 8th grade, and we'll ship them. No cost to you. The principals, the administrators, the teachers are loving it, because who doesn't want to celebrate Constitution Day? I mean, my goodness, it's the one thing that binds us all together. It's the one thing that no matter what your political views, no matter what your religion, no matter, what your beliefs are, we all live under the Constitution. And so it should be something that everybody, will support. And so we've just been really blown away, because we started giving out 25,000 our first year. And that was in 2016 when we gave our first distribution. And this year we're giving out in all 50 states over 1 million copies of the Constitution to the kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
But we got a lot of work ahead. So we're just getting started.
Yes, definitely. Well, when I was in school, we all watched Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, I love that.
For now, I love it too. I would love to see a remake of that.
That's something we're working on.
Oh,
so
really?
Yes, we're working on some videos. We've got a wonderful Abraham Lincoln impersonator named Roger McKelman. He's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
He's working on a series for the Bill of Rights. And then we're also working on some music. And so we're trying to come up with some things that kind of upgrade Schoolhouse Rock to relate to the kids today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. My older boys, they're out of the house now, but they were big fans of Teddy Roosevelt, and we got to see a Teddy Roosevelt impersonator, and it was just
that's wonderful.
I've seen Abraham Lincoln and Mark Twain and Thomas Jefferson, but I would also love to see the cartoon Animal Farm redone. Because what kids are being taught in school is straight out of the Marxist playbook.
It really is. It really is, Kelly. And one of the things that I really want people to understand, I started this because I'd never read the Constitution. Yeah. And when you read the actual words of the Constitution, you start to see the things that you're being told that aren't true. Yeah. And that's what we want our kids to read it for themselves. It's not hard to read. It's 48 pages. Our founders wrote it so that the average person could read it and understand it. And so as I started to read it, I started to change my views. I started to realize that the things happening in our country are not as our founders intended. And so it started to change my views on what the government should do, what it shouldn't do, but also what I should do as a citizen. Yeah, and so exactly. That's important.
Yeah, and I want to lay a little background here, because I think a lot of people, this is their belief, that England was terribly tyrannical, and we invented freedom. We made up this Constitution and kicked them out. And that's really not the full story, because we have a heritage of freedom going back hundreds of years, if not thousands. Mm-hmm. And our Constitution was built upon principles such as by John Locke, who I believe he lived in the 1600s. Mm-hmm. And a great foundation was laid under English law. England had a constitution, and we were objecting to some of the taxation policies and other policies based on the law, based on infringement of that constitution. So we got together Articles of Confederation. We worked together. We declared our independence, and it was 1776 was independence. We had the War of Independence. And then it was only later that the Constitution was drafted, and not everybody wanted it. Some people were afraid it put too much power in the federal government, and I'm reading right now about some of those debates, and I've read much of the Federalist Papers. So I think the point I'm getting to is we have this longstanding heritage of freedom, and the Constitution belongs to everyone. The Bill of Rights belongs to everyone. It enumerates or lists rights that you have. And I think people should know about that because it's part of their heritage.
Absolutely. And of course, we know as human beings, our rights are given to us by God. Every human being has that desire for freedom. And throughout history, there have always been those who have tried to overtake other people for economic reasons and power reasons and things like that. And so it's inherent in us as human beings. Our rights are given to us by God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our Constitution guarantees and protects those rights, but they don't come from the government. And I think that's really important for our young people to understand. Our rights don't come from the government. And
Right.
we are sovereign. The people are sovereign. We have a constitutional republic, not a democracy.
Yeah.
And so helping them to understand the difference, because a democracy actually is detrimental to minorities, whereas a constitutional republic protects minorities.
It is, because a straight democracy, like we saw in some of the Greek city-states, it goes by the will of the mob, and anybody who's not, who's in a minority is just out of luck, and it can lead to a tyranny of mob rule, which
Absolutely.
is a lot of what I see nowadays, and people are treating freedom like it's a dirty word.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we want to make sure when our kids read their words for themselves, that opens up their curiosity and they start asking questions. And that's what we want. So we want them to read it for themselves so that they can decide what it means to them, because isn't that what education is about?
Yeah, it is.
Is to decide for yourselves, okay, what does this mean to me? What is my role? Because I understand my rights, my liberties, but then I also have responsibilities.
Yeah, and I wanted to interject a point here just as a point of interest. Frederick Douglass, the great Black abolitionist, called the Constitution a glorious liberty document, and Martin Luther King Jr. referred to it as a promissory note. And they both realized that from the time the Constitution was written, things weren't perfect. Not everyone was being treated equal, but they looked to the Constitution as a promise and an ideal to live up to. And I know a lot of the founding fathers abhorred slavery. They didn't know how to end it right away, because what do you do with all these unskilled, untrained, uneducated people? But they were working in that direction. And what's tragic to me right now is that people are pointing to the Constitution and the founders and people who've worked so hard to bring equality, and they want to trash that whole thing. We would be trashing years and centuries of progress and work. And that Constitution is for everyone. It doesn't matter if they didn't practice it perfectly in the past. That was always the intention. Sometimes change takes time, and that's unfortunate. But
absolutely, and I love what you said. It's in their intention. When you read the Declaration, you see the founders' intention in black and white. You don't have to question it. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator. It's there. And so that was the ideal. Now, they had challenges and they had situations. Just think about it. 103 years ago, I couldn't vote. I had no say. I was would have been a property of my spouse, So, there was a lot of things that were going on when our country was founded, that needed changing. And our founders were brilliant because they knew this and they wanted it. And they wanted to make these changes. And so they drafted this beautiful document that is an experiment. And we are to become a more perfect union. We will never reach perfection, but that is our goal, to keep becoming better and better. And that's why it's so important for everyone to know what it says, what's in it, and your part. Because as citizens, we elect people in this constitutional republic to represent our voice.
Right.
When you elect someone, and I used to not have that attitude. I used to just elect people and I would just assume they'd go to Washington and do what they're supposed to do. And of course,
Same.
you know what happens when you assume.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just like, oh, well. And
Yeah.
so now, I understand that I need to let my people that I elect to represent me know my voice. And even if someone is elected who is not, let's say I'm a Democrat and a Republican's elected, let's just say,
Yeah.
then, it's still, they're there to represent you. Even if they're in a different party or different views or whatever, they're still your representative, and you still need to let them know, and I think in this country, we've become so divided, that part is really something that I hope that through this project, we can help bring people more together and unified under our Constitution.
Yeah. And something you said really struck a chord with me about women's suffrage, the right to vote. And, I think what particularly young people need to understand right now, who've been sold this version of history that it's, that this constitutional republic is oppressive and everything. It wasn't mob rule democracy that allowed women to vote. Obviously, only men were voting, so they would have had no chance. It wasn't mob rule democracy that led to civil rights reforms. Martin Luther King Jr. and many of the women working for women's suffrage referred to the Constitution and said, we also have these God-given rights. We're equal in the eyes of the law. Because if you had voted maybe in the 60s about some of these things, probably wouldn't have passed. But they stood on the Constitution and they stood on that promissory note. And that is what has been freeing people. You don't just declare yourself free and suddenly you are. It takes work.
Right.
And it's unfortunate to me that a lot of people think that the very document that has brought these freedoms that these great reformers have relied upon is somehow the problem. It's not. The problem is exactly what people are turning to right now, which is mob rule, which suppresses minorities, which denies people rights. So
absolutely,
all of these groups who are complaining today, they're where they are. They've made the progress because of the Constitution, and now they want to trash it. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't to me either. And our young people are taught, we hear things today like, oh, the Constitution's racist, or, these different things. But our Constitution has been changed through our amendment process, and there is a process, and we've used it 27 times. So our young people need to understand that we can change it, but it is not something that can be done on a whim. It's very thorough. It's very thought out. It's, when we make those changes are needed and wanted. And, that's what they need to understand, instead of being told a lie that our Constitution is a racist document, so therefore it's invalid, when it's not, and that's just wrong to teach that. And so, we need to teach them the correct process. If they believe that something needs to be changed, they can work toward that. As a citizen, that's our right. We can work toward
and the Constitution isn't the problem, because it says quite clearly that all men are created equal. Men meaning humanity.
Absolutely, yes.
The problem has been people's attitudes, people's willingness to see other people as human beings, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And in that sense, we haven't seen progressivism, we've seen regressivism, because we're now being told once again that a person's value comes from their skin color, that if you're of a certain skin color, you're racist. If you're of another one, you're incapable of being racist. We're going backwards.
Absolutely. And it comes down to, literally, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I'm very thrilled that I very seldom have a negative conversation, but I welcome it. I welcome debate, because that's what our country was founded upon. And so I had a lady call, and she didn't like a particular thing, a group of people that were in working with us, and she was screaming and yelling, and she was talking about, well, you realize that our Constitution was has the separation of church and state. And I said, well, actually, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But it was just ignorance. It's not. It's just ignorance on the part of what it actually says. And so many of our citizens just don't know what it says. So they repeat these things that they've heard, but it's not true. And so I think it's important, when you read the words, then you know. And once you know, you know.
That's true. They haven't read it. and they obviously need to read it before they make these bold assertions. But I'm
Right.
also a fan for at least understanding what the Federalist Papers say, because the Federalist Papers, written by two of these guys in back of me, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and then Alexander Hamilton also, that they were justifying the Constitution, the need for it, the rationale. And they really laid out very well how human nature works, what happens to nations when people aren't free. And, people are going on sound bites. They need to really understand what this country was built upon and why they have the freedom right now to make assertions that, if the fact checkers were honest, they'd say, well, no, that's not a fact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's why what we're doing is so crucial, because our young people are our future and we want to make sure they're educated. And honestly, I cannot imagine anyone who would not want our kids to read the Constitution for themselves. If they do, then that person really has a problem with being an American, because that is what makes us all, it binds us together as citizens, is our Constitution. No matter your religion, your politics, your beliefs, that is what binds us together. And so, that's what I am excited about, because we're honoring and celebrating the day. We want to bring back a sense of respect to the Constitution. We should honor it. We should celebrate it. It's an amazing document, and it protects every single one of us.
Right. And right on our money, it's printed E pluribus unum, from many one. And the whole goal is that we are all seen as equal in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of God. We all have the same potential, equal rights, whatever the choices we make in life, whatever skin color we're born with, or religion we choose, or how we feel about relationships with other human beings, and what we choose to do in our household. We're all equal under the law.
Absolutely, we are. And I had this conversation with a young man about a year ago. Of course, I give constitutions to everybody, and what's really cool is when the kids take these home, the teachers are reporting that the parents want them because they have not seen one, so that's really cool. But I had a conversation with a young man. He was African American, and he was a young business owner, about 25 years old. And we were having this conversation, and I shared with him the Constitution, and he said, he was looking at it, said, my friends think the Constitution is racist. I said, they do. And I said, well, he said, yeah. And I said, well, tell me what you think. I said, is there anything in this country today that I can do under this Constitution that you cannot do? And he thought, and he said, no. I said, well, you take that message back to your friends and make sure they understand they are not a victim. They are victors. Our children are victors, and we want every child, no matter their background, their color, it does not matter. They can aspire to be anything they want to be in this great country, and that is so important. It scares me that is being promoted, that children are being told that they're victims or that they're an oppressor. That is a dangerous place to go. And that's very upsetting to me that would be promoted in schools.
It is. And it's misguided anger, because Frederick Douglass talked about how they weren't realizing the full promise of the Constitution at that time. Mm-hmm. He talked about, where's our equality? But he referred to the Constitution as a glorious liberty document, because he knew that within those pages were the keys to freedom and true equality. Unfortunately, in the society at the time, it took work. It took time to change people's attitudes. But he never called the Constitution racist. He had a high regard for it. What he was questioning was how people were putting it into practice, and he was right on that regard. It wasn't being applied equally.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is what we're seeing today. People who are putting things on the Constitution that aren't there, and so it's so important for us to actually know the words, know what we have, protect it. It does upset me with some of these things that our children are being taught, because I think of all of the freedom fighters. I think of the man who inspired me, who was involved with the civil rights movement. And it's almost as if they're trying to take the last, 50, 60 years and just act as if it never happened, and set us back. what's happening today is definitely not moving us forward. It's setting us backward with this attitude of the Constitution's racist and that kind of thing, because it's the furthest thing from the actual truth. And we want to make sure our kids have the chance to read the truth for themselves.
Well, you love your children, you love your family, in spite of knowing that they're imperfect and that they need to develop, and you tend to overlook some of the faults. And it's fine. It's okay to love our country. It's okay to recognize that we do have a past, that we have faults. But I also think it's important not to live in the past, to recognize the progress that we've made and to continue that, to pick up on it, not to throw all of that away. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just ask you to tell more about your organization, how people can contact you, how they can get involved, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, of course, we're expanding into all 50 states this year. We've already expanded, and we have pockets of schools all over the U.S. that are getting our constitutions, but we have more work ahead. And so for 2023, we're already starting now. We're having tomorrow a huge celebration in Nashville for the Constitution Day. It'll be our sixth annual one. So you're welcome to come if you can come to Nashville. It's a free event. You can go online and see all about it. We have my Tennessee senator of my district, our Congressman Mark Green, Senator Kerry Roberts, a lot of different great folks. They're going to be participating. Our Abraham Lincoln impersonator, Roger McCalman, will be there. He's wonderful. Yeah, it's going to be really fun. And so we're going to be honoring and celebrating the day and the work we've accomplished. And then we're starting the new year. So the way to get involved is really simple. Just go to the website at 917society.org and get involved with us. You can sign up for our newsletter. I do one a week, so you can see where everything's going on. You can volunteer in your district. We need parents and grandparents to get involved, clubs, organizations. We have several groups like the American Veterans have been really wonderful. They cover a lot of areas. We have anything from Civitan to Rotary, different community groups. We have Moms for Liberty, different organizations that jump in and help deliver them to the school. Now, we are a nonpartisan 501c3, an educational nonprofit, but we use anybody who wants to help in their community. So you can sign up online to be a volunteer in your district. If we don't, we're going by counties. So we like to have one person in charge of a county, and then they can have volunteers under them to help get them out, depending on how big the county is. My county here is small. So our representative, Mary Littleton, actually delivers them to the kids, which is awesome. So we are getting more legislators involved. And I know we had Oklahoma legislators this year, Pennsylvania legislators this year, Kentucky. So we're getting a lot of folks, a lot of legislators involved because, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution. And so we get them engaged.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah. And then you can donate. Now, it's very easy. You can go online and donate. It's $25 to sponsor a classroom for their constitutions we send out, and then all their resources are free online. So that helps with making new videos and that kind of thing. But that gets the constitutions printed up. Each year we do one huge bulk printing, and then we ship out. And so the shipping's almost as much as the printing nowadays, but that will help sponsor one classroom. So you can sponsor one classroom, 4 classrooms, 10, however many you want to sponsor. We have a founders club, which sponsors, that ends up being like $1,000 a year. Some people like to do, and that helps with this huge bulk printing budget, because that is a big part of our budget. But I want to just say something about why we print, because I'm asked this question all the time. On our Constitution and on our website, you can find this little QR code right here, and you can download it on your phone. But we don't let the kids know that. Because what we've learned is by putting this in their hand, you see, he asked me when I had last read my Constitution. He said, your Constitution. And I never thought of it as mine. It was just the Constitution. So what we're trying to do with our young people is to create a sense of ownership to the document. Yeah. This is theirs, their Constitution. Absolutely. It belongs to them. Mm-hmm. In their hand, it's tangible, it's physical, it's visible, it's emotional. And then we have the teacher, which is really cool. The teacher signs and dates it, the very first page. Let me get it to not stick. Okay, they sign and date it. I don't know if you can see that right there. They sign and date it. So we make it a big deal for Constitution Day. It has the Declaration, the Constitution, all the amendments, the signers. But the last page is really cool. It has here the citizenship oath for the United States. So if you were born here, you didn't take an oath. But I was inspired by some people I worked with who had moved here from the Ukraine. And this was probably, 10 years ago when I first met them. But one was a lawyer and one was a concert pianist, very well educated. But they were working in our housekeeping department. And I thought, wow, they're here in America and loving it. And they were willing to leave their country. And why? Because of freedom, what we have, because of what this represents. And so I thought, okay, so I went to the federal courthouse with them, and I saw them all raise their hand, and I thought, I never had a moment where I raised my hand of allegiance. We that are born here really take it for granted.
Yeah. And I worked for the Epic Times directly with some of the founders who came here from China, and my boss earned his American citizenship, and he was so incredibly enthusiastic and excited about that. I'm actually helping refine his story, but they certainly don't take it for granted, especially coming over from a communist nation. They look at America as a land of promise where you can actually be free.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because Dr. Ming Wang is a renowned surgeon here, an eye surgeon in Nashville. And he was born in China, and he experienced the Cultural Revolution. And when he was in 9th grade, they shut down all the schools and universities, and he was sentenced to a labor camp. And he escaped that. 20 million kids were sentenced to a labor camp, hard labor, and they would have died there. He was able to escape that by learning to play a musical instrument called the erhu, and then also to dance. And he was part of the Chinese propaganda troupe. That's what it was called. And so he would travel around. And then when the dictator died, they opened the universities back up. Well, he was a senior, and he had to cram 3 years of school into a matter of 3 months in order to get into the university. He did. And he came to America at 18 years old with $50 in his pocket and an American Chinese dictionary. And there's a major motion picture coming out called Sight that is the story of his life.
Really?
And
Yeah, I would love to get in touch with him if you don't mind connecting us.
I would love to connect you. You would love to talk with him. And he's our Founders Club president from the 917 Society. You can go on our website. You can see some of his videos. And when the movie, we're waiting to see, how it's going to be distributed. But once it is, then we're going to be sharing it with the kids, because it shows him as a 13, 14-year-old, that 8th grade year. It shows him and what he experienced, so that our young people can see someone their age and what they went through. Because I think that's really important for our kids to understand that, we are so spoiled here. We really are. I mean, we have so much to be thankful for, and to see what someone else went through. I mean, can you imagine your 13-year-old being sentenced to a labor camp for the rest of their life? I can't even imagine.
No, I can't either. My kids sometimes complain about having to take out the trash.
I know. And so I would love to connect you with Dr. Wang, because he is amazing. He will come, if you would love to have him on your show. I know he would love to do it. And he's just a wonderful patriot.
I would love that. And I work for Wang as well. And they may know each other, I don't know, but I would love to introduce the two of them as well, because that would be great experience.
Wonderful.
Okay. Well, I need to close for now, but I would love to talk to you more, have you on again, and maybe unpack some of these things like women's suffrage and separation of church and state. But I just want to encourage anybody who's watching, if you have heard these things about the Constitution, if you feel like you're living in a quote unquote racist country, I'd encourage you to take a second look, read the Constitution, see what it actually says, and fact check for yourself these things you've heard, that the Constitution is racist and so on and so forth. Research what Martin Luther King said about it, what Frederick Douglass said about it. Research how the founders truly felt about equality. And then, that's the freedom that you have to use your mind to get the facts and not just be spoon-fed what you're supposed to believe. So
absolutely.
Joni, thank you so much for the work that you do. And it was really a pleasure talking with you. And I'm looking forward to having you back on again.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. I look forward to it. I can't wait.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.